This is the bus stop outside the Alpenblick campsite in Unterzeen, which is a part of Interlaken, and today is Friday the 10th of February 2017, and so it's well out of season for the campsite, but despite that there is one or two people here, including myself of course, but the weather is not as good as it would be in season. On the other hand, there are probably far fewer people than there would be in season, and as I bring the camera around, there's fog, but you can get an idea of how great it must be when the weather is clear. So come here from say April to October, that's probably the best time to be here. And as you can hear behind me, there's some work going on to get the campsite ready for season. There we've got a view of the mountains, so the word Blick means view in German. Alpenblick, you get lots of campsites called Seeblick, so lake view for example. And now I'm heading towards Thun, which is on Lake Thun. It's about 20 kilometers from here. Now if you come here, you get this card which is valid on the buses, and whereas the card from here isn't actually valid as far as Thun, today's the last day of validity for my bus ticket that I had from the other campsite I was at, which is called Stuleg. Excellent campsite on the mountainside, views of Lake Thun. It's about 15 kilometers from here, more or less, something along those lines. Whereas this campsite, it's close to Interlaken. Now it's 5 kilometers, so I took the bus there, and yesterday I walked back. And another thing which is local, which really appeals to me, and walking back I noticed this, you've got farms which are selling local produce. That's to say, they make their own cheese, they've got their own milk, they've got their own eggs, and whereas it's pretty expensive by non-Swiss standards, for example 6 eggs cost 360 francs, so that's about £2.50, something along those lines, which is rather expensive for 6 eggs, and a milk is 1.10, so it's about 90 pence. But it's fresh alpine milk, plenty of vitamin K2. The taste is unbeatable. I managed to get some of it in Wolfegg in Germany. You can see my film from there. It's from a machine, and it's brilliant. So it's well worth doing in my opinion. Anyway, now I'm going to head towards Thun on the bus, and the reason I chose today, other than being the last day the ticket's valid, is because the sun is coming out a little bit after a few days of snow and fog, so that's why it's today. Here we have a view of Thun from the castle, or just below the castle, and unfortunately it's an overcast day, but that's what I've got. But in front you might be able to just make out the mountains, Lake Thun over there, mountains beyond, and the city, which is, I believe, the largest garrison town in Switzerland, and the reason for that is because the military school was moved here in the 19th century. Behind me is the church, which dates back to the 14th century, although it's been considerably restored since then. So the restoration, in fact, was 2 restorations in recent years. So 1917, the one that finished in, I think, was 2015. At the entrance to the church, we have these paintings of historical value. There we have the birth of Jesus. That is the Archangel Gabriel. And there we have the crucifixion. So in bygone days when people couldn't read, they could come here, look at the pictures, and they'd know what was going on. Oh, the entrance, I think that's St. Maurice. Yeah, the church inside is absolutely new. As soon as we're here, I'll show it to you. Restored 1968 to 1970 and in 2014 to 2015. Why did it need restoring between 1970 and 2014? What did they do? That is Thun Castle. I think the castle looks a bit like the opening from Disney films. Did it inspire whoever came up with that logo, I ask? This is the north side of the town. The castle that we can see today dates to around 1200 when it was started, although like all castles which was added later, and this was a residence for quite a long time. All castles were residences, of course, but this one stayed as a residence, I believe, much longer. Quite imposing from this angle. The field gun we have over there is something which I think is relatively modern, in the 19th century. There's a museum here. It's open for 3 hours from 1300. Courtyard unusual in as much as it isn't flat. Well, being on top of this hill would make it more difficult to be flat. You can get a discount if you get this Lake Thun card, and it gives you a discount for entering the castle and lots of other places as well, and it's free from the campsites. Just have to ask one. And it gives free transport on the buses as well. The hard way up to the castle is by using this staircase, although at the moment it may not seem too difficult. I came up here earlier with a couple of other people, and all three of us were panting by the time we got to the top. I often talk about the engineering involved in building things like this, particularly as castles tend to be built in places which are relatively difficult to get to. Well, here we have a friendly way of giving information, but there's just one point I would like to make on this one, and it's down here. So, to build the walls of Thun Castle, 5,400 tons of mortar and 10,600 tons of stone. And somebody had to bring it all up here. And it survived all these years. the idea, but the construction goes back to 1190. Imagine the amount of labour though on doing something like this. Of course, I've filmed things in other places which are even more difficult than this. That tower is a bit younger than the rest of it, about 18th century. This is the town hall square. On the right is the town hall. And on the left is the castle. How about that for a view? And this dates to 1500. The tower, 1585. One thing I've seen here in Switzerland which really impresses me, or rather here in Thun, is that people just cross the road where they want and cars just stop. Indeed, I was standing here just now looking lost and thinking about this subject, and somebody stopped for me, and no zebra crossing, no nothing, and I was a couple of metres from the curb at that, so it didn't even look as though I wanted to cross. On the other hand, I need to point out at the same time is that the amount of aggression that was shown on the road as I was coming here last week, going through Lucerne and heading towards Interlaken, I haven't seen that much aggression on the road for a very long time. People not happy at the speed I'm going, when, despite the fact that I'm going the legal maximum. Got a motorhome, so they obviously maybe felt they couldn't overtake me. But there was like 2 or 3 incidents as I was coming with cars beeping at me. You don't know why they're beeping at you, so you slow down. Maybe it's a sign of danger, you don't know. But I think the problem was I was going too slow, and they're obviously beeping at something, just makes you go even slower. Silly, really. this street has a very curious double system. Shops at road level and the pavement is above, and you've got shops at pavement level as well. Two lots of shops in. And here we have another set of stairs up to the castle. These ones date to 1818. The castle's that way, the church is that way, so I think we'll go this way. There's no shortage of fountains here. That gate dates the 13th century. It's a pity that today there are no mountain views. Unfortunately, it's such that I can't really decide when I can be here because things are planned and I don't have the choice. But you know, this is 10th of February, so what can one expect? The view of the mountains of the Bernese Oberland with the lake, which you can get a pretty good idea of its colour even today. This from the river, the lake's just a few hundred metres down there. And here we have this interesting bridge sluice, one of the symbols of Thun. Hotels which clearly date back to the age of greatness for this region, which I would say in the 19th century when it was discovered, so to speak, by tourists, and the beginning of the tourist trade here. Those doing the grand tour of Europe, Interlaken and maybe slightly to a lesser extent Thun was part of that tour. And you can see the majesty of a place such as the Thunnerhof in front.
And these islands in the Aare River, these are private homes. I don't know if they're still used as homes, could be used as offices or something. But what a fantastic place to live. And you're going to have to take my word for it, but there's fantastic views of the mountains over there. And this bottom island here, for example, that's, you can see the gate in front of me, around 120 metres, and that is privately owned as well. The value of property, I don't know, I suppose it's well into 7 figures, EUR. And the white you can see on the other side, they're not stones, that's snow. This is a statue of Heinrich von Kleist, a Prussian dramatist, writer. He lived here in Thun, came here from Paris. He didn't like Paris. I didn't think too much of it as well when I was living there. I think I'd rather live here. And he committed suicide in 1811 at Wannsee with his partner. And so he was born in 1777, so he'd been then, what, 33, 34 years old. And inspired by Rousseau's writings, he came here because he wanted to be a farmer, but he ended up being a writer instead. And this statue was meant to go in Wannsee, close to where he committed suicide, but there was already a statue of him there, so it got donated to Thun instead. Whilst I'm here, I'd like to mention a number of other things which you can see in Thun, but which I won't be visiting. First is the Tank Museum, which has a lot of equipment, not just Swiss equipment, but apparently it's got quite a good collection from the Second World War. You've got Shadow Castle, and you've also got one of the oldest panoramas in the world, which is here, which can be visited. We've got the Cultural Museum. You also can go in the castle as well, Castle Museum. One of the things which I think must be quite popular, of course, the boat rides. There's some caves nearby as well. So there's lots to do and to see here. I would suggest, of course, coming a little later in the year, so from April onwards, maybe. As I walk around now, temperature I would say about 3 degrees. So I've got a hat on and a winter coat. But I'm warm enough. People said to me about, why don't you take the boat, go for a boat ride? And I said, what, in this temperature? You must be joking. I went for a boat ride in Santa Barbara where the temperature was about 18 degrees centigrade, and out at sea it was pretty nippy. But okay, this isn't the sea, it's the lake. Well, the same, when you're indoors in the boat, it's not the same as being out of doors. So if I came later in the year, I'd certainly be doing that. But now, I don't think so. It's too cold. The bus ride here, by the way, from Interlaken is outstanding. I had some very interesting conversation on the way in, so I didn't film it. But wonderful views. I think I've never seen such a nice bus ride on a normal bus journey. That's a scheduled city route. Number 21 from Interlaken to Thun. Really outstanding. The railway station and the bus station are both here, conveniently located in the centre of town. I don't understand how the Swiss Railways manages to get by. I had a look at its finance. It's really heavily subsidised, to the tune of 1 franc per journey it works out as. And despite that, it's pretty expensive. If you want to go to Zurich from here, for example, it's well over 100 francs. So if there's three of you, it's 300 francs. And, well, in the car, it's a fraction of the price. Despite that, the public transport here is really excellent. The links are amazing, all over the place, and for places which got a really small population. The bus isn't here, comes at 15:02, so I've got 20 minutes, so rather than hang around here, I'm going to walk a bit and probably end up missing the bus. Let's hope I take the right route.